"Can I sit here just a minute?" the one-legged girl asked, and the CEO answered. The airport lounge was quiet in a strange way. It was not silent, but the sounds felt far away. Soft footsteps moved across the polished floor. A low voice announced flight updates in the background. Coffee machines hummed gently. People sat in comfortable chairs, staring at phones, laptops, or nothing at all. Everyone looked busy, even when they were doing nothing. At one corner table near the wide glass windows sat a man in his early 40s. His suit was clean and expensive but simple. No bright colors, no loud signs of wealth. His watch was modest for someone who could afford much more. He sat straight, his posture calm and controlled. This was Daniel Carter, a well-known CEO, though no one around him seemed to recognize him. He preferred it that way. Daniel had arrived early for his flight. He liked being early. It gave him time to think, though lately thinking felt heavy. His phone lay on the table, screen dark. Emails could wait. Meetings could wait. For once, he wanted a moment of quiet. He looked out through the glass wall at the planes resting outside. Huge machines built with care and strength, ready to carry people across the world. Daniel admired efficiency. He had built his life on it. But as he watched, he felt a strange emptiness, like something important was missing, though he could not name it. That was when he noticed her. At first, she was just movement in his side view, a small figure entering the lounge slowly. Daniel glanced up without much interest, then paused. The girl could not have been older than 14. She wore a faded jacket that looked a little too big for her and carried a small backpack on one shoulder. Her hair was tied back neatly, though a few loose strands fell across her face. What caught his attention was the way she walked. She moved carefully, balancing herself with effort. One leg stepped normally, while the other was missing below the knee. In its place was a simple prosthetic, worn and clearly used for a long time. Each step looked practiced but tiring. People noticed her. Daniel could tell by the quick glances. Some looked for a second too long, then looked away. Others pretended not to see her at all. No one spoke to her. No one offered help. The girl stopped near the center of the lounge. She stood still for a moment as if gathering courage. Her eyes scanned the room, moving from table to table. Most seats were taken. Some had bags on them. Some people sat alone but looked busy, their bodies closed off. Daniel watched her without realizing why. He told himself it was nothing, just curiosity. Still, his eyes followed her as she took a few more careful steps. She walked past one table, then another. Each time she slowed slightly, then moved on. Her shoulders tensed, then relaxed again. Daniel noticed how her fingers gripped the strap of her backpack tightly. Finally, she stopped near his table. Daniel looked down at his phone again, pretending not to notice her standing there. He did not want to stare. He did not want to make her uncomfortable. Still, he felt her presence, close and uncertain. A soft voice broke the quiet. "Sir." Up close he could see her face clearly. Her eyes were dark and serious, too serious for someone her age. There was politeness in them and something else, carefulness, maybe learned from experience. "Yes," he replied, his voice calm. She swallowed and pointed gently to the empty chair across from him. "Can I sit here just a minute?" There was no demand in her voice, no sadness pushed forward, just a request, honest and small. Daniel hesitated, not because he wanted to say no, but because the moment surprised him. People rarely spoke to him like that. Usually they wanted something more, a favor, a deal, attention. This girl wanted a minute. He looked at the chair, then back at her. He noticed how she stood, balancing her weight carefully, as if standing too long would hurt. He noticed the faint marks on her prosthetic, signs of use and repair. "Of course," he said, standing slightly and pulling the chair back for her. "Please." Once seated, she let out a small breath, like someone who had been holding it for too long. Daniel sat back down as well. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He returned his phone to the table but did not pick it up. Something about the silence felt different now. Not empty, but shared. "You can take your time," he said gently, noticing how she kept her hands folded in her lap. She nodded. "I won't be long, I'm just waiting." They sat quietly again. Around them, the lounge continued its normal rhythm. People came and went. Cups clinked. A child laughed somewhere far off. Daniel found himself studying Emily without meaning to. She sat straight, alert but calm. There was no sign of self-pity in her posture. If anything, she seemed used to managing on her own. "You travel often?" she asked suddenly. Daniel blinked, surprised. "Yes," he answered honestly, "more than I'd like." She seemed to appreciate that. "It's okay," she added quickly. "I don't mind talking about it." "Most people don't let me sit," she said quietly. Daniel frowned slightly. "Why not?" She looked at him, surprised, then smiled again, a little warmer this time. Before she could respond, a voice called out from across the lounge. "Emily, thank you for letting me sit." Daniel watched her go, noticing again the strength in each movement. As she reached the desk, she turned back for a brief second and gave him a small wave. Daniel lifted his hand in return. When she was gone, he sat back down slowly. The chair across from him was empty again, but the space felt different now. Warmer somehow. His phone buzzed with a new message. A reminder of a meeting waiting for him on the other side of the flight. Daniel looked at the screen, then locked it without reading. For the first time in a long while, his thoughts were not about work. They were about a girl who had asked for 1 minute and unknowingly changed the direction of his day. And somewhere deep inside, he felt that this was only the beginning. Daniel sat alone again, but the quiet did not feel the same anymore. The chair across from him was empty, yet his eyes kept moving back to it without thinking. He told himself it was nothing, just a short conversation, just a polite girl resting for a minute. Still, his thoughts did not return to work. He picked up his coffee and took a slow sip. It had gone lukewarm, but he did not mind. His attention stayed on the crowd instead. He watched people pass by, each one carrying their own worries, their own stories. For years, he had seen people as numbers, schedules, and results. Now, without warning, one simple meeting had shifted his focus. A few minutes passed before he noticed Emily again. She was standing beside her aunt near the information desk. The woman looked tired, her shoulders slightly bent, her face tight with stress. She spoke quickly to the staff member, nodding and shaking her head. Emily stood quietly beside her, holding onto her backpack strap, saying nothing. Daniel watched them longer than he meant to. The aunt thanked the staff and turned away. She spoke to Emily, her voice low. Emily nodded. They began walking toward the seating area again, this time in Daniel's direction. Emily noticed him first. Her eyes widened slightly in recognition. She whispered something to her aunt, who glanced at Daniel briefly, then nodded. They stopped near his table. "Excuse me," the aunt said politely. "Would you mind if we sat nearby? There aren't many empty seats. Emily told me you were kind enough to let her rest." The sounds of the airport continued around them, but the small space they shared felt calm. After a few minutes, Sarah checked her phone and sighed. "They changed our gate again. I need to walk over and ask something. Emily, will you be okay sitting here for a few minutes?" Sarah stood and walked away, her steps quick and purposeful. Emily shifted slightly in her chair. "She worries a lot," she said softly. "She cares," Daniel replied. "Yes," Emily agreed. "She always has. I learned to be." "This place is nicer than the last one we waited in," she said. Daniel smiled. "Some are better than others." Titles often changed how people treated him, but Emily's curiosity felt simple, without expectation. "I run a company," he said. Her eyes widened slightly. "That sounds important." "Now I'm not sure." One of them glanced at Emily's prosthetic, then quickly looked away. Emily noticed, but she did not react. Daniel did. He felt a flicker of anger, surprising himself. "You handle things very well," he said quietly. Emily looked at him. "Like what?" He admired her honesty and her strength. "How old are you, Emily?" he asked. 14, she said. 14, he repeated softly. He thought of boardrooms, contracts, pressure, mistakes. And here was a 14-year-old who had already faced challenges he could barely imagine. "Do you go to school?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Sometimes from home." sometimes in person. But some days are good, she continued, like today. Because you asked, he said finally, and because it felt right. It's been a pleasure. Do you still want to know what happened? Her aunt was nearby, speaking on the phone again, giving them a little space without meaning to. The noise of the airport returned, but for Daniel, everything felt quieter. He could sense that Emily was deciding how much to say. She rested her hands on her knees and took a small breath. When I was 6, she began, I started getting very sick. They gave me medicine and sent me home. My dad missed work to take me to doctors. The infection had spread too far. I just remember the lights, the doctors, and my mom crying. Learning to answer questions. He had seen numbers like that on reports, charts, budgets. He had never seen them like this. Then, Emily said, her voice softer now, my dad got sick too. But it was too much. That's when my aunt stepped in. Just because it makes them uncomfortable. The doctor said later that better tools might have changed things. He kept his face calm. My company works with medical systems, he said carefully, in some areas. It is. Emily, he said quietly, thank you for telling me this. She sounds wise too. She told it very well. You made me think. That's okay, Emily said. They exchanged contact information, simple and careful. No promises, no big words. As Emily and Sarah walked away, Daniel remained standing for a moment, watching them go. For the first time in his career, a decision was forming in his mind not because of profit or pressure, but because of a 14-year-old girl who had chosen to share her truth. And Daniel knew deep down that once you truly see something like that, you cannot unsee it. This was no longer just a story. It was a responsibility. Daniel boarded the plane with a restless mind. The seat was comfortable, the cabin calm, but his thoughts would not slow down. As the plane lifted into the sky, he closed his eyes for a moment, yet Emily's words stayed clear in his head. Her voice was calm, but the story behind it was heavy. It followed him like a quiet shadow. During the flight, Daniel opened his laptop. He told himself he was just checking emails, but instead he searched through old reports, supplier lists, and past contracts. Numbers filled the screen, but now they felt different. Each line meant something more than money. It meant people, families, children like Emily. When he landed, Daniel went straight home, but he did not rest. That night he sat alone in his study, reading late into the hours. He found records from years ago, deals approved quickly, decisions made to save time and cost. Nothing illegal, nothing careless on paper, yet something felt wrong. The next morning, Daniel walked into his office earlier than usual. His assistant looked surprised. Long night, she asked. Yes, he replied, clear head though. I want quality reports, complaint records, and long-term impact. That evening, he received a message from Emily's aunt. It was short and polite. She thanked him again for listening and said Emily was nervous but glad she had shared her story. Daniel replied with equal care. He thanked her for trusting him and asked how Emily was feeling after the travel. She's tired, Sarah wrote back, but hopeful. Over the next few weeks, Daniel kept his distance but did not forget. He checked in once in a while, never pushing, never promising, just listening. Meanwhile, the internal review began to show patterns. Older equipment, cost-focused contracts, suppliers that met basic standards but never improved. Nothing dramatic enough to cause headlines, but enough to cause quiet harm over time. Daniel felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He had not caused Emily's pain directly, but he had been part of a system that allowed such outcomes. One evening, he asked Emily and Sarah if they would be open to meeting again, somewhere neutral, no pressure. They agreed. They met at a small public park near a medical center. It was a calm place with benches and trees and people walking slowly. Emily sat beside her aunt, her prosthetic visible, not hidden. Daniel respected that. I didn't ask you here to explain anything, Daniel said carefully. I asked because I wanted to be honest. I don't want to offer charity, Daniel added. That's not what this is about. Just because it was right. I also want to help you personally, he said, looking at Emily, but only if it supports your independence, not replaces it. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course, Daniel replied. Why are you doing this now? She asked. You could have just listened and walked away. Nothing heavy, just life. Before they left, Emily asked one last question. Will this change you? She asked. Daniel smiled faintly. I think it already has. She worked harder, knowing she was not alone but still in control of her own path. Sarah found some relief too, knowing support existed without strings attached. Daniel, meanwhile, felt lighter in a way he hadn't expected. He listened more, asked better questions, paused before approving decisions. One afternoon, he received a message from Emily. I walked farther today without stopping, it read. I wanted you to know. Life continued with its usual pace, but something underneath had shifted. Emily returned to her normal routine. School in the mornings, therapy sessions on certain afternoons, and quiet evenings at home with her aunt. Some days were easy. Other days were not. There were moments when her leg hurt, moments when she felt tired of explaining herself to people who did not understand. But there was also something new inside her now, a steady confidence, a belief that her future was not limited to what she had lost. She worked hard in school, especially in science. She asked questions. She stayed after class. Her teachers noticed the change. They saw how focused she was, how determined, not driven by pressure but by purpose. At home, Sarah watched her with mixed emotions. Pride, relief, and sometimes quiet worry. She had carried responsibility for so long that it felt strange to share the weight, but she could see the difference too. Emily smiled more. She talked about plans, not dreams that felt far away, but real goals. Daniel stayed in touch, but always with care. He never pushed himself into their lives. He checked in now and then, asked about school, listened more than he spoke. When he offered help, it came as options, not instructions. Emily appreciated that. She never felt small around him, never felt like a problem to be solved. At work, Daniel continued to change in ways others slowly noticed. Meetings were different now. He asked questions that surprised people. He wanted to know who was affected, not just what was efficient. Some executives resisted at first. They were used to the old rhythm, faster, cheaper, simpler, but Daniel stayed steady. We're not just building systems, he said in one meeting. We're shaping lives we may never see. Suppliers were reviewed more carefully. Decisions took longer, but they felt stronger. The company did not lose its success. If anything, it gained something deeper: trust. One afternoon, nearly a year after the airport meeting, Daniel received an invitation. Emily's school was hosting a small science exhibition. She had worked on a project about medical innovation and accessibility. Sarah had asked gently if he would like to attend. Daniel did not hesitate. The school gym was filled with posters, models, and excited voices. Parents walked slowly from table to table. Students explained their projects with nervous energy. Daniel found Emily standing behind her display. She looked older somehow, taller, more sure of herself. Her prosthetic was decorated with a simple pattern, something she had chosen herself. When she saw him, her face lit up. "You came," she said. "I wouldn't miss it," he replied. She explained her project carefully. She spoke about how small improvements in design could make a big difference in daily life, how comfort, durability, and access mattered just as much as cost. Daniel listened, proud but quiet. "You should present this someday," he said. "People need to hear it." That minute changed a lot. She taught me how. Emily, meanwhile, lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling. She thought about her journey, about pain, loss, and long days that felt unfair. But she also thought about strength, about how far she had come. She realized something important. Her story was not defined by what happened to her, but by what she chose to do afterward. The next morning, Daniel received a short message. "I decided," Emily wrote, "I want to study biomedical science one day. Can I sit here just a minute?"